My name is Amanda, I'm 32, and until last Thanksgiving, I was the perfect daughter. The one who, for 6 years straight, transferred $11,200 a year to her parents for their living expenses. But that evening, something broke irrevocably. After the words my father spoke in front of the whole family, there was no going back. They thought they had put me in my place. They had no idea that what they had actually given me was freedom. I returned home with an icy calm and did what I hadn't dared to do for the last 6 years. I started a chain reaction, the consequences of which they could not even imagine. I had no idea what chaos it would cause by the next morning. And before I tell you why at dawn my entire family was dealing with the police on their doorstep, write in the comments what city you're watching me from, and be sure to subscribe if you've ever had to make difficult decisions involving family. I grew up in a typical suburb of Columbus, Ohio. My parents' names are Susan and Robert. From early childhood, everything in our family was kind of uneven. All their love and attention were focused on my younger sister, Alice, who is now 27. I realized this when I was about 7. That year, she got a new bike for satisfactory grades, while I only got a pat on the back for an excellent report card and was told to keep up the good work. This pattern repeated in everything. Alice had the bigger room, she got new clothes more often, her school performances were applauded louder. Over time, I simply accepted my role as the reliable but invisible daughter who would always be in her sister's shadow. Everything changed abruptly when I turned 18. My father, who had worked at the local factory for 20 years, was laid off. My mother's salary as a clinic administrator was barely enough to live on, and our family found itself on the brink of financial disaster. This happened right when I was about to go to college. I had to take out huge student loans and work 3 jobs simultaneously to pay for my education. I barely slept for 4 years. But when Alice went to college 3 years later, my parents somehow found the funds, even taking out a second mortgage on our house. Despite everything, I graduated from university with a degree in IT. After 6 months of persistent searching, I landed an excellent position at a tech company right here in Columbus. By the time I was 24, I was already earning a 6-figure salary and could finally breathe freely. That's when my parents started calling me more often. At first, we just chatted, but soon the conversations invariably turned to their financial difficulties, growing debts and the risk of losing their home. I felt uneasy that I was finally on my feet while they were drowning, so I offered to help. What started as a one-time payment quickly turned into a system. Soon, I was covering part of their mortgage, utilities, and car payments every month, totaling almost $1,000 a month. They never asked for it directly. But they always had some emergency that required my help for just one more month. Gradually, my help transformed from a voluntary choice into my direct obligation. All this time, my sister Alice was trying her hand at business, but none of her ventures were successful. First, she tried to sell electronics online, but the business failed after 6 months. Then there was the idea of a food truck, which never got past the idea stage. The latest venture was an investment in cryptocurrency, where she lost $15,000 of our parents' savings. But despite these failures, my parents continued to believe in her. Alice just needs one successful project to take off, my mom would say. She has a real instinct for it. My father proudly told everyone that his younger daughter was an entrepreneur, while almost never mentioning that it was my stable career that allowed them to stay afloat. The only person who saw the whole situation from the outside was my best friend, Ava. We had been friends since college, and she knew my family well. "They're just using you, Amanda," she said one evening as we sat at my place with a glass of wine. "You realize that, don't you? You give them over $11,000 a year, and they can't even say a simple thank you." "But they're my family," I repeated my usual excuse. "I can't just watch them lose their home." Ava just shook her head. Helping and being used are not the same thing. I knew she was right, but admitting it was too painful. So I kept paying. And I kept hoping for the gratitude that never came. There were moments when their ingratitude was simply impossible to ignore. For my mom's 55th birthday, I organized a luxurious weekend in Nashville for her and my dad, spending $2,000 on it, concert tickets, dinner at a famous restaurant. But when they returned, I didn't hear a word of thanks for the gift. Instead, they talked nonstop about how Alice had called them and sent a touching card. My gift only received a "we had a nice time," after which they immediately switched back to Alice. Then, last year, my father needed surgery. I took 2 weeks of unpaid leave to care for him, cooking, cleaning, driving him to doctor's appointments, and making sure he took his medication. But by the end of the second week, he started complaining that I wasn't arranging his pills correctly and added that Alice, of course, would have done a better job, but she was too busy with important things. I later found out that these important things were just meeting up with friends. More recently, Alice's latest business project, a delivery service for organic dog treats, failed. It lasted 3 months and left behind 2 angry investors threatening to sue. My parents called me in a panic. They didn't ask directly, but they strongly hinted that I should get my sister out of this little trouble. This trouble cost $10,000, and I refused to pay. This was followed by weeks of silence, interrupted only by calls filled with reproaches about my lack of family loyalty. And through it all, I continued to live in a modest apartment in Columbus and drive an 8-year-old car, putting my dream of owning my own home on hold. Moreover, in my living room stood a huge jar labeled Reserve Fund, intended exclusively for my parents. My friend Ava hated that jar. She called it the guilt piggy bank and constantly told me to spend that money on a therapist who would explain to me why you let them treat you like an ATM. Looking back, I realize I should have listened to her much earlier. A couple of weeks before Thanksgiving, I successfully completed a huge project at work. We launched a new software platform, and the CEO himself praised our team. On top of that, I received a substantial holiday bonus. For the first time in a long time, I felt I could seriously think about buying my own home the following spring. That same day, my mom called to discuss Thanksgiving. "We've decided that the holiday will be at your place this year," she announced, leaving me no choice. "Our place is a bit cramped, and you have such a lovely apartment." I immediately remembered how last year they complained that my place was too sterile, the food was not homemade, and the chairs were uncomfortable. But, against my better judgment, I agreed, still hoping that this time would be different. "Okay, Mom, I'll arrange everything," I replied, already mentally figuring out how to arrange the furniture. The weekend before the holiday, Ava and I went grocery shopping. I spared no expense: an organic turkey, the best ingredients for side dishes, 3 types of pie, and several bottles of expensive whiskey. The total bill came to almost $700. "Do you really think they'll appreciate it?" Ava asked skeptically as I was choosing cranberry sauce. "Last time, your mom complained there was too much cream in the mashed potatoes." "This time will be different," I replied stubbornly. "I got a bonus, we have something to celebrate." On the way, I called Alice to ask if she would bring anything. "Sorry, sis, I'm completely broke right now," she answered, with the sounds of a video game in the background. "But I'll definitely be there. By the way, I have a new project launching soon, found some major investors." "No problem," I said, adding a couple more boxes of chocolates to the cart. "I'll buy everything myself." 3 days before the holiday, my mom called again. "We've had a little chat," she began, with a phrase that never boded well. "And we decided it would be better to gather at our place after all. Aunt Carol wants to see our renovations, and Dad doesn't like celebrating holidays at someone else's house." I looked at my refrigerator, stuffed with groceries, and at the new tablecloth on the table. "Mom, but I've already bought and prepared everything." "So just bring it all with you, what's the problem?" she replied as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "It will be cozier at our house anyway." In the end, as usual, I gave in and rearranged all my plans. I spent the entire day before Thanksgiving in the kitchen, figuring out which dishes would be easy to transport. I carefully packed my best tablecloths and decorations, trying my best not to lose heart and maintain a festive mood. That same evening, I drove to my parents' house to drop off some of the preparations. When I entered the house, I heard my father talking on the phone with a relative in the living room. I stopped in the hallway so as not to interrupt. "Amanda?" "Yeah, of course, she's helping with dinner," I heard his dismissive tone. Although, to be honest, she never does enough for us, especially considering how well she's doing. She has tons of money, but she still sometimes watches us struggle to make ends meet. I froze on the spot, still clutching the container with the turkey marinade. His words stunned me. Never does enough. That phrase echoed in my head. I gave them $11,200 every year. That was almost a tenth of my entire post-tax income. Returning home that night, I couldn't sleep a wink. My father's words mingled in my head with Ava's warnings, which played over and over again. Could she have been right? Had I become nothing more than a convenient source of money for my own family? For the first time, I seriously considered setting boundaries, but I was immediately terrified of the consequences. What if they really couldn't manage without me, and I just couldn't see it because of my resentment? Thanksgiving morning was gray and snowy, which perfectly reflected my mixed state of mind. I loaded my car to the brim with containers of food, boxes of holiday decor, and that expensive whiskey. The entire 40-minute drive to my parents' house, I repeated a mantra to myself: today will be different. They will see my care. They will be grateful. I parked in front of their modest house, the very one whose mortgage I paid on the first of every month. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed the first armful of bags and went to the door. A desperate hope still lived within me that this Thanksgiving would be the day I finally received the recognition I had waited for so long. I knocked on the door, struggling to hold the heavy grocery bags. After the third knock, my father opened the door. He didn't even glance at my load. "You're blocking the entire driveway," was his first greeting. "Alice will be here soon, she'll need a place to park." "Good morning to you too, Dad," I replied, walking past him. "I'll move the car as soon as I bring everything in." He gave me a critical look. "What's with the new car? Isn't it a bit too fancy for your age?" The fancy car was a standard sedan, the first new car I could afford after 8 years of driving an old vehicle with no air conditioning and a jamming door. "I needed a reliable car for work," I said, not understanding why I had to justify it at all. Mom appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Her gaze swept over my new silk blouse and dark jeans. "Wow, someone's all dressed up today," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Not all of us had time to get dressed up," she added, "some of us have been on our feet since 7 in the morning." She made a vague gesture towards my neat hairstyle. "I brought everything already prepared," I said, pointing to the bags, "and that 18-pound turkey, just as we agreed." "Great, the kitchen is all yours," she replied. "Although, I already made my signature stuffing. You know Dad only eats mine." I spent the next couple of hours working alone in the kitchen. I had to time everything so that all the dishes would be served hot at exactly 3 o'clock, as we had agreed. From the kitchen, I could see my parents watching football on TV. In all that time, they never once peeked in to offer help. Around 1:30, the doorbell rang. I heard joyful shouts and loud laughter. Alice had arrived. From the sounds of it, she received a welcome fit for a queen. "Here she is," my father exclaimed. "Our guest of honor." I wiped my hands on my apron and came out of the kitchen. My parents were hugging Alice from all sides. As usual, she came empty-handed, but they were as happy to see her as if she had brought the entire holiday dinner herself. "Hey, sis," she finally noticed me. "Smells delicious. You've always been the main one in the kitchen." Before I could say anything, the doorbell rang again. On the doorstep were Aunt Carol, Uncle David, and my cousin Sophie, the only relatives who came this year. They brought soda and a store-bought pumpkin pie, which my mother praised as if it were a culinary masterpiece. Amanda is in the kitchen, she informed the guests, taking their coats. This year she insisted on cooking everything herself. Aunt Carol went straight to the kitchen and gave me a warm hug. "Honey, do you need help? It looks like you have your hands full here." Her simple act of kindness after hours of solitude in the kitchen almost made me cry. "It would be great if you could help set the table," I replied. While we took out and arranged the formal dinnerware, which I had to clean of dust, Aunt Carol told me about her garden and Sophie's studies in college. It was the first genuinely pleasant and normal conversation I'd had all day. When we finally sat down at the table, it looked perfect. A golden brown turkey, homemade sauces, roasted vegetables, several types of mashed potatoes, and 3 different pies for dessert. I even made 2 kinds of stuffing, including Dad's favorite, despite Mom's morning comment. "The turkey seems a bit dry," Mom immediately remarked as Dad started carving it. I always basted mine generously with butter. I kept silent, though I knew I had used the best recipe. "And the whiskey is too sweet," Dad added, taking a sip from the expensive bottle I had bought especially for him. Alice, who was already finishing her second glass, just shrugged. "I think it's great. Free booze is the best booze, right?" No one had arranged seating, but it so happened that I was at one end of the long table, while at the other, at the head, sat my parents with Alice between them. Aunt Carol, Uncle David, and Sophie took the middle seats, creating a lively barrier that perfectly reflected my emotional detachment from the family. Before the meal, my father said the traditional prayer. "Lord, we thank you for this meal and for bringing our Alice home safely. We are grateful for our health, our home, and our family. Amen." Not a single mention of who had prepared this meal. Or who was paying for this house. As we started passing the steaming dishes, Uncle David, who always showed a genuine interest in me, turned and asked about my work. "Amanda, your mom mentioned you're involved with computers. Tell us, what exactly do you do?" I gladly seized the opportunity to talk about something I was genuinely good at. "I'm a senior software developer in the financial technology sector," I explained. "To put it simply, my team creates complex systems for banks. We just recently launched a new platform that will be used by millions of people across the country." Before I could elaborate, my father rudely interrupted me. "So, you fix computers when they break?" he asked loudly, addressing Uncle David more than me. I felt a familiar sting of irritation. "No, Dad," I tried to make my voice sound patient, though I felt like I had explained this 100 times. "I don't fix them. I create the software that runs on them." In fact, I added, hoping this at least would impress him, I just led a project that brought our company a multi-million-dollar contract. And I got a very nice bonus for it. A moment of silence fell over the room. But instead of congratulations or even a question, my mother immediately seized the moment to shift all the attention to her favorite. Speaking of business success, she chimed in enthusiastically, beaming and turning to Alice. "Darling, tell everyone about your amazing new idea." And just like that, with a single move, the focus shifted. My real achievement, the result of months of work and sleepless nights, was instantly forgotten. All attention was now fixed on Alice's latest, not yet existent idea. "I'm going to launch an innovative fitness app," Alice announced proudly, as if she were already the head of a corporation. "It will completely change the approach to home workouts. I already have a business plan, and next week I'm starting meetings with investors." "Now that sounds amazing," my father exclaimed, his face glowing with pride. "Our daughter is a true entrepreneur." I silently ate my turkey. And by the way, it wasn't dry at all, but very juicy. I watched as the food I had spent days and hundreds of dollars on disappeared from the plates with almost no comment. And at the center of everyone's admiration sat Alice, enthusiastically describing a business that existed only in words. Even as we moved on to dessert, Alice continued her monologue about the fitness app as if she were giving a presentation to investors. Actually, it doesn't take much to get started, she said casually, waving her fork with a piece of pie. Just about $40,000 for prototype development and initial marketing. Mom immediately lit up with enthusiasm. We were just thinking we could help you in the initial stage, right, Robert? Dad straightened up and nodded importantly. Of course. We still have some savings left. That's what family is for, to support their children's dreams. I almost choked on the piece of pumpkin pie I had just put in my mouth. Those some savings they spoke of so lightly were the remnants of their retirement fund, a fund that was already nearly empty. Alice, I began, trying to keep my voice as calm as possible. How exactly will your app differ from the hundreds of others already on the market? Have you analyzed the competition? Alice theatrically rolled her eyes. Of course, I have, Amanda. My app will have a unique feature that no one else has. And what's that? I gently insisted. I can't go into the technical details right now, she dodged the question. In the tech world, ideas are constantly being stolen, you of all people should know that. I exhaled slowly, gathering my thoughts. I'm asking because investors only put money into very well thought out business plans. The fitness app market is oversaturated right now, and statistics show that over 90% of new projects in it fail. Here she goes again, my mother sighed loudly and gave the other guests an apologetic look. She always ruins Alice's mood. I'm not ruining the mood, I objected, trying to stay calm. I work in this industry. I'm just trying to give you a realistic assessment before you invest the rest of your retirement savings into another project that could fail. What do you mean, another project? Alice flared up, her face turning red. Just because you have a boring office job doesn't mean everyone dreams of that. Some of us, take risks for something bigger. Taking risks is fine, I replied calmly. But this is your fourth business idea in the last 3 years. The online store, the food truck, the cryptocurrency investments. None of them have made a single cent. You're just jealous. Alice blurted out. You've always been jealous. It infuriates you that Mom and Dad believe in me and support my dreams. Jealous? I gave a bitter laugh. Alice, you have no idea what you're talking about. I turned to my parents. While you were taking risks, I'd been paying the bills in this house for 6 years. The mortgage, utilities, cars. Every year, I transferred $11,200 to you so you could make ends meet and support her dreams. I looked at my sister again. So yeah, I'm very jealous. A dead silence fell over the table. Aunt Carol and Uncle David exchanged awkward glances, and Sophie stared at her plate. Amanda, my father said in a voice that promised nothing good. We don't air our dirty laundry in front of guests. On the contrary, now is the perfect time, I replied. Since you're about to invest money you don't have into another one of Alice's projects. Have you thought about what will happen if it fails? Who do you think will cover your expenses when your retirement savings run out? We have always supported both our daughters equally, my mother said, her voice laced with hurt. Equally? I looked her in the eye. I paid for my own college education by working 3 jobs and paying off loans. You paid for everything for Alice. That's not fair, my mother stammered. No, what's not fair is paying your bills for 6 years and not hearing a simple thank you, while Alice is put on a pedestal for non-existent projects, I said, surprised at my own boldness. I just want you to understand, if you invest your money in this app and lose it, I can't guarantee that I'll be able to increase my help to save you. At that moment, my father slammed his fist on the table with all his might. The plates jumped, and his face turned crimson. Get out of my house! He screamed. Just because you pay the bills doesn't make you part of this family. How dare you hold your help over our heads? Nobody asked you for it. The room fell silent again. Even Alice looked shocked. Robert. Aunt Carol tried to intervene, but my father silenced her with a gesture. No. I'm tired of her arrogance. He continued. She comes here, criticizes everything, acts as if we'd be lost without her. We managed just fine before you, and we'll manage just fine after you. At that moment, my mother leaned towards me and hissed so that everyone at the table could hear, "You're just jealous of your sister. You've been jealous your whole life." I sat perfectly still while their screams and accusations echoed in my ears. And suddenly, I felt everything inside me grow quiet. The pain and resentment were replaced by an icy, crystal-clear calm. 6 years. For 6 years, I had sacrificed my dreams to support them. And this was their true gratitude. I carefully folded my napkin, placed it on the table, and slowly stood up. "Fine," I said quietly. My voice didn't waver. "Then let her pay the 11,200. But my father wasn't finished. "You were always a difficult child," he continued. "Always unhappy, always doubting. You think because you have a good job and money, you become better than us? Family is about loyalty, not checks. Alice understands that. You never will." I silently picked up my purse and car keys. There was no point in arguing. What more could be said? "If you leave now," he threw at my back, "don't bother coming for Christmas." His words hung in the air. "Robert, you don't mean that," Aunt Carol stood up. "You're all just tired." But I looked my father in the eye and knew, he meant exactly that. This wasn't just an argument. These were years of hidden resentment that had finally erupted. "I'll get my coat," was all I replied. As I went to get my coat, I heard footsteps behind me. It was my cousin Sophie. "Amanda, wait," she said quietly. "Are you okay? Can you drive after all this?" I just nodded, struggling to hold back tears. "Yes, thank you for asking." "What they said, that was wrong," she added. "We all see how much you do for them." I gave her a quick hug, put on my coat, and walked out the door. Before closing it, I took one last look at the dining room. The scene was telling. My mother was comforting Alice, who had somehow already managed to become the main victim of this drama. My father was pouring himself more whiskey with trembling hands. Aunt Carol and Uncle David just sat in the deafening silence. I closed the door. I walked to my fancy car, and only then, driving away from the house I had been paying for 6 years, did I finally allow myself to cry. I drove aimlessly for almost half an hour, tears blurring my view of the road. I ended up in a park on the Scioto Mile overlooking the river. On Thanksgiving evening, the place was deserted, exactly what I needed. I was sitting on a cold bench, trying to process what had happened, when my phone vibrated. It was a message from Ava. "So how's your perfect evening going?" Instead of typing, I just hit the call button. When Ava heard my sobs, her voice immediately became serious. "Amanda, what happened? Are you okay?" Through tears, I managed to recount the entire conversation, my father's cruel words, and how I had left. "Where are you now?" she asked firmly. "At the park on the riverfront. Don't move. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She kept her word. Exactly 20 minutes later, her car pulled up to the park. Ava had left her own family dinner to come to me. She sat down next to me in silence, hugged me, and once I had calmed down, I was able to tell her everything in detail. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that," she said when I finished. "But honestly, I'm glad." "Glad?" I couldn't believe my ears. "Yes. Because this had to happen someday. They'd been riding on your back for years, and you let them, because deep down you kept hoping that one day they would magically change and become loving, grateful parents." She squeezed my shoulder tighter. "Some people just don't change, Amanda." "So what do I do now?" I asked, feeling completely lost. And now, Ava said, standing up, we're going to get the hottest coffee in this city and make a plan. And then you're going to start taking your life back. We found a small coffee shop, one of the few open on a holiday evening. Sitting at a table with hot mugs in our hands, I listened to Ava, and the fog in my head began to clear. She helped me see that it wasn't just about the money. It was years of emotional neglect. The constant comparison to Alice, the devaluing of my successes, the taking of my help for granted, it was all part of the same ugly picture that I was too close to see. They disowned you today, Ava said bluntly. After 6 years of you supporting them. I think it's time to just accept their words as fact and stop expecting anything different. When I returned home that night, the despair was gone. In its place was a cold, decisive calm. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. I methodically went through my bank statements for the past few years and compiled everything into a spreadsheet, detailing every expense for my parents' support. When I finished, the final figure on the screen was a shock, even though I knew it approximately. $11,200 a year. That's how much my role as the good daughter actually cost. Seeing that total sum displayed on the screen was sobering. It's one thing to have a rough idea of how much you're spending, and quite another to see the concrete number. $11,200 a year. Over 6 years, that amounted to almost $70,000. $70,000. With that money, I could have made a down payment on my own house long ago. That money could have been working for my future. And for all of it, I had received nothing but reproaches and contempt. At that moment, something inside me finally broke. Or maybe, on the contrary, it was fixed. Studying the list, I realized something else. It wasn't just about the money. Almost all of their household systems were tied to me. The internet, all the streaming services they watched in the evenings, and even the smart home security system I had installed for them last year after their neighbor was robbed. Everything was registered in my name and paid for directly from my accounts. For a second, I hesitated. To disconnect everything, it was such a decisive, irreversible step. But then my father's words echoed in my head, just because you pay the bills doesn't make you part of this family. Fine, I whispered to the empty screen. All my hesitation vanished. With an icy calm, I began to methodically, one by one, cancel the subscriptions and close the accounts. Click by click, I was erasing myself from their lives. I started with the most important one. I canceled the automatic mortgage payment for the next month. Then came the utility bills, car loans, and insurance. After canceling each payment, I sent an official notification to the service company, informing them that from that day on, responsibility for the account was being transferred to Robert and Susan. Next, I tackled the digital services. I changed all the passwords on the streaming services, then removed their TV and tablets from the list of authorized devices. I even logged into the smart home system, saved a copy of all the settings for them, and then deleted my payment information. With every click, with every closed account, I felt an invisible weight lifting from my shoulders. This wasn't revenge. This was liberation. I had confused financial assistance with love for too long, naively believing I could earn their approval if I just gave enough. But as Ava once told me, some people are simply incapable of giving you what you need, no matter how much you do for them. The first thing I did was write a short email to HR, requesting a week of leave for personal reasons. Then I sent a message to Aunt Carol. I'm sorry the evening ended the way it did. I want you to know that I hold no ill will towards you, Uncle David, or Sophie. What happened tonight is the result of years of problems in my relationship with my parents. I just need to take a break. By 11:30 that night, I had completed the digital dismantling of my financial support. The final step was the smart home system. Taking a deep breath, I pressed the remote disconnect button. I knew it would cause a full reboot and temporarily disable their thermostat, lighting, and security cameras. After that, I turned off my phone, took a sleeping pill I kept for emergencies, and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. For the first time in 6 years, I was free from the burden of caring for my parents. The next morning, I woke up at 8. For a moment, I felt an incredible lightness, but then the memories of the previous evening came flooding back. I turned on my phone, and it immediately exploded with notifications, dozens of missed calls and messages that had arrived since early morning. First, I listened to a voicemail from Aunt Carol, left at 7:15 a.m. "Amanda, call me as soon as you can. Something has happened at your parents' house. They woke up, and nothing is working, the electricity is flickering, and the alarm has been wailing non-stop. The password to turn it off isn't working." She paused. "Your father thought it was a break-in and called the police. They're there now. Just call me back, please." Next was a text from Alice, sent at 7:22 a.m. "What the hell, Amanda? My car got towed this morning. I had an important meeting, and now I'm stuck at our parents' house. Fix this, now." The voicemails from my mother were a real roller coaster, from rage to cheap manipulation. 7:40 a.m. "Amanda, call back immediately and explain what kind of circus you've orchestrated with all our accounts. The bank just called me. They said the mortgage payment was cancelled. Is this your revenge for last night's dinner? Some kind of sick joke? All this stress has made your father's heart act up. If anything happens to him, it will be entirely on your conscience. Honey, please, if we said something wrong yesterday, we apologize. Just call us. We can't handle all of this alone." And finally, a single message from my father, left at 8:30. His voice was devoid of all emotion, which only made it sound more threatening. "Whatever trick you've pulled, it ends today," he stated flatly. "I've already consulted with your cousin Kevin, you know he's a lawyer. He said your actions could be interpreted as intentionally causing financial harm to elderly parents. I'm giving you until noon to put everything back the way it was. Otherwise, we will be forced to take legal action." Scrolling through my phone, I saw the drama unfolding in real time. The flood of messages painted a vivid picture of the chaos I had caused. There was a screenshot from my mom with a notification from the bank, "Mortgage payment failed." Then a warning from the power company about an impending disconnection. But amidst this stream of accusations and panic, there was one message that made me pause. It was from my cousin Sophie. "Hey. It's a madhouse over here, but I just wanted to say I'm on your side. The way they treated you yesterday was disgusting. And I'm guessing it's always been like that. Take care of yourself." But the most unexpected thing was a voicemail from Aunt Carol. She had always tried to stay out of our family dramas, so her call surprised me. "Amanda, it's Aunt Carol," she began. "I just want to say. Yes, you've certainly caused a big commotion here, but what your father and sister allowed themselves to do yesterday crosses all lines." She paused for a moment. "The way they devalued everything you've done was just awful. You see, Susan and Robert have been telling us for years that it was Alice helping them with money. We all believed she was the one supporting them. So yesterday, we were in complete shock when we found out the truth. Don't rush into any decisions. Just know that not all of the family thinks you're to blame for this situation." I sat on the couch for a long time, mulling over possible responses. Should I just text? Call? In the end, I decided they needed to not only read but also see and hear me. I set up my phone on a tripod, hit the record button, and recorded one short video message. Then I sent it to my parents, Alice, and also to Aunt Carol and Uncle David. I wanted them to be witnesses too. "Mom, Dad. Yesterday at dinner, you made it perfectly clear that my years of financial assistance mean nothing to you. Dad, you explicitly stated that paying the bills doesn't make me part of the family, and then you demanded that I leave and never come back. I want to remind you that for the last 6 years, I have been fully supporting you. That's $11,200 annually that went towards paying for your house, cars, utilities, insurance, phones, and everything else. And all this time, my support was taken for granted. While all your praise and faith went to Alice and her endless failed business ideas. Therefore, I have decided to honor your wishes. As of today, I am completely ceasing my involvement in your financial affairs. The mortgage payments, utility bills, car loans, and everything else are now your responsibility again. I have sent all the necessary information regarding the bills and accounts to your email so that you can transfer everything into your names without any problems. Mom, I want to say something separately about your message regarding Dad's heart pains. If it was a real health problem, you should have called 911, not used it as a way to pressure me. Manipulating with health issues like that is unacceptable. Dad, regarding your threat of a lawsuit. The fact that you're even willing to sue your own daughter for stopping her financial support speaks volumes. But legally speaking, all those bills were in my name, and the payments were my voluntary choice, not an obligation. I don't know what will happen with our relationship going forward. But right now, I need to distance myself from you to protect myself. Perhaps one day you'll understand that family is built on love and respect, not on a sense of duty and manipulation. Goodbye. I had barely sent the video when a call came from Alice. I declined it. She immediately sent a panicked text, "Mom's having a heart problem because of you. We think it's an attack. Get over here now." My stomach twisted with fear. My first thought was to grab my keys and rush over. What if it was true? What if I had actually caused my own mother to have a heart attack? But before I could bolt out the door, another message arrived, this time from Sophie. "Hey. Don't fall for their drama. Aunt Susan is completely fine. She and Uncle Robert are currently trying to convince the police that you robbed them. Alice is just helping them pressure you." Their manipulation was so brazen it took my breath away. I sent Sophie a short message, "Thanks for telling me the truth." Then I opened the security system app on my phone. I still had access to the cameras I had installed for them. On the screen, I saw their living room, 2 police officers, my father and Alice, and my mother, who was supposedly having a heart attack, sitting perfectly calmly at the kitchen table drinking tea. She looked completely healthy, just very upset. Throughout the day, my phone continued to be flooded with messages. They were all filled with a mixture of panic, accusations, and reproaches. Alice was particularly prolific. In a long message, she wrote about how I had betrayed the family that dedicated their whole lives to me and that my selfish act had brought our parents nothing but shame and trouble. "If you have a shred of conscience left, you have to put everything back the way it was," her message concluded. I looked at her message. In the past, I probably would have started arguing, trying to prove something, apologizing. But now, I only felt a cold clarity. My response was brief. I typed, "No," and hit send. I dedicated the entire next week solely to myself. I started daily sessions with a therapist specializing in family trauma. I began calling friends whose company I had neglected for so long because of my parents' problems. And I finally started sleeping, truly, deeply, and peacefully, in a way I hadn't slept for years. The messages from my parents gradually tapered off when they realized I wasn't joking. Later, Aunt Carol told me they had to break into their savings to pay the bills and the mortgage. And Alice moved back in with them, supposedly to support them through this difficult time. In reality, her support consisted of living off them, using their internet, and not contributing a single cent. But the most surprising thing happened next. Uncle David called me and invited me for Sunday dinner, immediately clarifying, "Your parents won't be there. Just us." My cousin Sophie started texting me almost every day, just to ask how I was, and never brought up the topic of reconciliation. Over time, my parents switched their tactics to completely ignoring what had happened. My mom sent out an email to everyone, announcing a Christmas dinner at their house. She wrote that she was looking forward to having everyone together to leave all misunderstandings behind. There was no hint of remorse in her words, only the certainty that I should return to my former role as if nothing had happened. Then came a message from Alice, full of veiled pressure. If you don't change your mind, Mom and Dad could lose the house by January. Is that really what you want? For them to lose everything because of your pride? Think about it, it will be your responsibility. I showed it to Ava. A classic attempt to shift responsibility, she sighed. Have they ever once apologized for real? Not once, I said. There have been ultimatums, guilt trips, and now pretense. But no one has said a simple I'm sorry for all those 6 years. Well, Ava replied, then they've given you your answer. Just believe what you see. 4 months later, I can confidently say that I have started a completely new chapter. I've moved to a new, gated community that none of my relatives know about. The financial flows that used to go to support my family, I have completely redirected to myself. Part of the money goes to building a financial safety net, and another part goes to developing my own business. I've opened a small web design consulting firm and work on it in my spare time. The path to healing has not been easy. In January, I found a support group for adults who grew up in toxic families. Listening to other stories, I realized for the first time that my childhood and relationship with my parents were not normal. I understood that it wasn't me who was the bad daughter, but that they had failed to appreciate the daughter they had. My therapist recommended several practices that have become part of my new life. I started journaling every day, pouring out everything that had been bottled up for years. I took up meditation to cope with the anxiety attacks that every phone call still triggered. And I got into kickboxing. There was something very symbolic and empowering about learning to hit back. Sometimes, news about my parents would reach me. I knew they had to sell the house and move into a small rental apartment. My father got a job for the first time in 10 years, as a part-time security guard. My mother started working more hours at her clinic. They were managing, slowly getting used to life without the financial cushion I had been for them for so many years. Alice's fitness app, of course, was never created. Deprived of parental funding, she was forced to get a regular job at a sporting goods store. According to Sophie, Alice still lives with our parents and complains at every opportunity that I ruined their lives. On the first anniversary of my financial freedom, I treated myself to a gift, a weekend trip to Nashville. I stayed in the same luxury hotel where I had once sent my parents for my mother's anniversary. There was something ironic about it, finally enjoying for myself what I had paid for others for so long. I realized that not all of my family was lost after that Thanksgiving. Aunt Carol and Uncle David became like real parents to me. They called, genuinely rejoiced in my successes, and never asked for anything in return. Sophie and I became very close and now regularly meet for coffee. I even started dating again, something I previously had neither the energy nor the time for. Through mutual friends, I met Daniel, a kind and understanding architect. When, on our third date, I nervously told him about the break with my parents, he simply took my hand and said, "Family isn't always about who gave you life. Sometimes it's about who makes you feel like your life matters." Now, looking back on that terrible Thanksgiving, I understand. By disowning me, my father did me a huge favor. He himself released me from the prison of my own unjustified expectations and endless sacrifices. By giving up the family that didn't value me, I finally found the strength to build a life full of respect and true love. The main lesson I learned from all this is simple: real family has nothing to do with money or a sense of duty. A real family is those who see you, value you, and love you unconditionally. Sometimes they are your blood relatives, and sometimes they are not. Accepting this truth was the hardest, but also the most important, decision of my life. Today, I am no longer an ATM for my parents or the eternal shadow of my sister Alice. I am just Amanda. And I am building my life on my own terms, surrounded by people who prove their love not with demands, but with respect and kindness. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision and break ties with loved ones? Tell me in the comments what helped you find the strength and set boundaries. If this story resonated with you, please support the channel with a like and a subscription. There are many more stories about self-discovery and healing to come. Thank you for being with me. And remember, sometimes the family we create for ourselves becomes more important than the one we were born into. Value yourself and don't let anyone diminish your worth.